I want you to picture a scenario.
Uh,
I think we've all been in it.
mm-hmm.
It's, 11:30 at night. The house is finally quiet. You're in bed trying to wind down.
Oh, I know this feeling.
And suddenly, your brain decides it's the perfect time to open the financial anxiety folder.
The universal late night panic. It is fascinating how that happens. You're trying to sleep and your mind just goes, hey, remember that bill? Remember inflation?
Exactly. And it's not just one thought. It's a whole highlight reel. Did I pay the credit card?
Yeah.
Can I actually afford that trip next month?
Huh.
Is my savings account looking a little, well, sad compared to everyone else's on Instagram?
It's heavy. That is the word I always come back to with money. Physically, money is just, paper or pixels on a screen. It has zero mass. But
Oh, it's
psychologically,
the heaviest thing we carry.
it is. And for most of us, the solution to that heaviness feels like it has to be complex. We think if the problem is heavy, the solution must be heavy lifting.
Right. We assume we need spreadsheets with 19 tabs and investment strategies that require a degree to understand.
And this ironclad, painful discipline,
Yes. But today, we are pivoting hard. We are looking at a source that takes the absolute opposite approach.
it really is a radical shift, especially now. We're doing a deep dive into a text called Calm Life, Money, Simplicity, and Peace. And what's immediately fascinating here is the format of the source itself.
What do you mean?
Well, it's actually written as a gentle, sleep-friendly text. It's designed to be read slowly to help you relax.
Which is so ironic, isn't it? Usually reading about money is better than a double shot of espresso for keeping you awake.
Mhm.
If I read a standard finance book before bed, I'm up until 4 a.m. stressing about compound interest.
Exactly. But the mission of this deep dive is to see if we can actually apply that calm philosophy to our wallets. We want to deconstruct this idea that managing money requires high stress, high adrenaline, and high complexity.
So the goal isn't necessarily to become a millionaire overnight.
No, not at all. It's to change the emotional temperature of how we handle our finances.
Moving from that panic and spending roller coaster.
Precisely. To a state of calm awareness. The source argues that you can be good with money without being anxious about money.
I love that. So here's our roadmap for this deep dive. We're going to look at how to manage money without feeling like you're micromanaging every tiny detail.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look at the psychological power of what the source calls slow changes. And finally, we'll explore how simple living isn't about deprivation. It's actually a biological hack to quiet the noise in your brain.
It's about finding peace in the numbers, which, yeah, it sounds like an oxymoron, but it's possible.
Okay, let's unpack this. The first thing that jumped out at me from the source is this concept of redefining control.
Right.
I feel like when people say, I need to get control of my finances, what they usually mean is, I need to punish myself for buying lattes.
That is the common narrative. We equate control with restriction and an extreme complexity. The source explicitly points this out as a myth. It says that people believe they need these complex plans, but that belief itself is a stressor.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Think about it. If you think the barrier to entry for financial health is some complex, perfect system, you'll never start.
It's paralysis.
Yeah,
You look at the mountain of work you think you have to do and you just go back to bed.
exactly. And you stay anxious. So the source proposes an alternative, simple budgeting. But you have to understand the definition here because budget is such a loaded word.
Oh, for sure.
In this context, it is not about controlling every line item, it is about clarity. The text makes a very important distinction. Simple budgeting is not about limits, it is about clarity.
I really want to drill down on that. Clarity over limits. Because limits feel like a cage. Limits feel like, I can't do this.
Right.
But clarity just feels like turning on the lights in a dark room.
That is the perfect analogy. When the lights are off, you are scared of what you might bump into. That is financial anxiety. When lights are on, you might see a mess, sure, but you aren't scared of the unknown anymore. You just see what is there.
So what does this simple budgeting actually look like? Because we can't just ignore the bills and say, I'm being clear.
No, you can't ignore reality. But the mechanism the source suggests is incredibly stripped down. It essentially asks you to know just three things, broadly.
Okay.
First, know generally how much comes in. Second, know generally how much goes out, your rent, food, bills.
Generally.
And third, try not to spend more than you earn.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
That sounds almost too simple. Can you really run a modern life on general ideas. Don't we need to know where every penny goes to be safe?
Well, let's look at the psychology behind that need for exactness. The source argues that you don't need exact numbers to feel safe. You need to know you are within the lanes.
Ah,
I mean, think about the anxiety of micromanagement. If you are stressing over a 10-cent difference in grocery prices or tracking every stick of gum you buy, your cortisol levels are just spiking.
and when cortisol spikes, we get into fight or flight mode.
Correct. And when you are in fight or flight, you make bad long-term decisions. This approach creates stability without that anxiety. It shifts the focus to two main questions. Do I have enough for my needs? And am I spending mindfully?
It's the difference between driving a car and obsessively watching the speedometer every single second
Yes.
versus just watching the road and flowing with traffic.
That is spot on. If you are staring at the speedometer or the penny perfect budget, you are going to crash or at least have a very stressful drive. This general idea budget allows you to keep your eyes on the road.
You just need to know, am I moving in the right direction?
Right, rather than what is my exact speed down to the decimal point.
Okay, so if we aren't obsessing over the budget spreadsheet, we still need to talk about the spending side because money does leave the account. We live in a consumer culture and, well, buying things is often how we deal with stress.
Right. And this is where the source gets really interesting about the psychology of spending. Again, the definition is key. The source defines spending mindfully not as not spending, but simply as slowing down.
Slowing down. It reminds me of how we eat. If you wolf down a meal while looking at your phone, you don't even taste it.
And you end up eating way more than you needed. Exactly. If you slow down, you actually enjoy it and you naturally regulate. So to help with this, the source provides a specific checklist. 3 questions to ask before you buy.
Okay.
First, do I really need this? Second, will this improve my life?
Those seem pretty standard. I feel like I've heard those before.
They are the basics, but here's the kicker. The third one.
Right.
Can I wait and decide later?
That third one is the game changer for me. Can I wait? Because usually, if I'm honest, the answer is yes.
Always.
But in the moment, it feels like an emergency.
And this leads to what I think is the most profound aha moment in this section. The source suggests a technique involving the pause. Often, when we are trying to save money, we feel like we have to tell ourselves no. And no is a harsh word. It feels like a parent scolding a child.
No. Makes me want to rebel. If I tell myself I can't have the gadget, suddenly I want the gadget 10 times more just to prove I have free will.
Exactly. It triggers a psychological phenomenon called reactance. You push back against the restriction, but the source suggests you don't say no, you say, not now.
Not now.
It sounds so subtle, but the psychological impact is massive. Not now leaves the door open. It validates the desire. It says, yes, that is a nice thing, and you are worthy of nice things, but let's just wait.
It reduces the pressure.
Totally. You aren't denying yourself. You are just managing the timeline.
It takes the emotion out of it. It's not a battle of will anymore. It's just scheduling.
Correct. And usually, if you say not now and walk away, the dopamine rush fades. 20 minutes later or the next morning, you realize you didn't actually want the thing.
You just wanted the dopamine. You wanted the hit, not the item.
Exactly. So not now saves you from the impulse without the pain of deprivation. It's a gentle approach.
I want to move to the next section because this really struck a chord with me. The source talks about safety. And I think if you ask most people what would make you feel safe with money, they'd say $1 million in the bank.
Or 10 million.
Right.
We equate safety with a specific large number. We think the pile of gold protects us from the world.
If I have enough money, nothing bad can touch me.
But the source challenges this completely. It states that feeling safe with money is not about being rich. It is about trust.
Trust in what? The bank? The stock market? Because those things fluctuate.
No, trust in yourself. This is where it connects to the bigger picture of resilience. The source breaks this trust down into 3 pillars. First, trust that you can handle small problems.
Okay.
Second, trust that you can adjust when things change. And third, trust that you don't need to be perfect.
That second one, trust that you can adjust, is so freeing because things will change. The car will break down.
Your rent will go up.
The job market will shift.
Yeah.
But safety isn't preventing those things. It's knowing you can pivot when they happen.
Exactly. If your safety depends on nothing ever going wrong, you will never feel safe, no matter how much money you have. You will always be looking over your shoulder.
Right.
But if your safety is built on the internal knowledge that I can handle small problems and I am adaptable, then you can actually relax.
It's internalizing the safety rather than outsourcing it to your bank balance.
The text talks about treating money calmly, not emotionally. When you trust your own adaptability, money becomes just a tool you use to adjust, rather than a measure of your worth or your survival.
So we have the mindset. Clarity over limits, not now instead of no, and trust instead of just hoarding cash.
Mm.
But we still need to build some of that safety net. So let's talk about saving. Because usually advice on saving is aggressive.
Hmm.
It's cut out everything you love, live in a cave, and hustle until you drop.
Grind set culture, it's very prevalent. But the source takes a very different path here. It calls for gentle saving.
Gentle saving. I like the sound of that much better. What does it look like in practice?
It's about small habits. The source gives examples that are notably quiet and simple. Making coffee at home sometimes. Notice it says sometimes, not always.
Not always. Okay.
Cooking simple meals. Using what you already have.
Using what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
That is such an underrated savings tip. I feel like whenever I have a problem, my first instinct is to buy a solution. Oh, I need to get organized. I have to go buy $100 worth of plastic bins.
When you probably have a box or a drawer that would work just fine, we are conditioned to consume solutions. The strategy here is about speed, or rather the lack of it. The source argues that slow changes are better than fast ones.
Or crash diet approach.
Exactly. When we try to overhaul our entire financial life in one weekend, it creates massive stress.
And we all know how crash diets end. You
Right.
starve for a week and then you eat an entire pizza.
Precisely. The rebound effect. We save aggressively for a month, feel miserable, and then go on a spending spree to soothe the misery. But with the slow strategy, you introduce one small habit. Maybe just the coffee thing.
Right.
You do it until it becomes normal, the source says. One small habit leads to it becoming normal. And when it feels normal, it feels easy.
You're building confidence, not just a bank balance. You're proving to yourself you can change.
There is also a really interesting reframe in the text about why we save. Usually, I think people save out of fear. I need to save in case disaster strikes.
Right. It's defensive. It's fearful.
And fear is a terrible long-term motivator. It keeps your cortisol high. The source suggests reframing the motivation from fear to future comfort.
Future comfort.
You aren't saving to ward off a catastrophe. You are saving so that future you can relax.
That is so much kinder. It's like I'm being nice to the future version of myself.
Mm.
Here you go, future host. Have a relaxing month because I put this money aside for you.
It changes the emotional flavor of the act completely. Saving becomes an act of self-care, not an act of paranoia.
So we have touched on budgeting, spending, and saving. But the source wraps all of this under a broader umbrella. Simple living. Now, I feel like simple living has become a bit of a buzzword.
Oh, yeah.
It brings up images of empty white rooms, one chair, and a single succulent plant.
It can definitely be misinterpreted as minimalism for the sake of aesthetics, or just being trendy. But the source defines simple living very specifically. It isn't about having nothing, it is about having enough. And it explicitly connects this to mental health and peace.
How does buying less connect to mental peace, aside from just having less clutter to trip over?
It's about noise reduction in the brain. The source makes a direct link. Buying less means fewer decisions. And this is crucial because decision fatigue is a real psychological phenomenon.
So every object demands a piece of your attention.
A tiny piece. Well, every time you buy something, you have to research it, compare prices, decide if it's the right color, buy it, maintain it, store it, clean it.
And eventually get rid of it.
It's a lot of cognitive load.
That is so true. Buying a new phone isn't just spending money. It's spending 3 hours reading reviews, worrying if I made the right choice, transferring data. It's a job.
Exactly. Fewer decisions mean less comparing and less pressure. The result, as the source puts it, is a quieter, more comfortable mind. It is about energy conservation.
Energy conservation. I like thinking of my brain energy as a battery. I don't want to waste it on deciding which toaster is the absolute best toaster in the world.
Yes. Every trivial decision burns glucose in the brain. It takes energy. By removing questions like, should I upgrade or should I change this? You conserve that energy for things that actually matter. Your work, your family, your passion.
You step off the treadmill.
The treadmill of a constant optimization.
The source also mentions calm routines as part of this simple living. Simple meals, familiar clothes, predictable days. Now I have to play the critic again. To some people, predictable days might sound boring.
Sure.
Where's the excitement? Where's the spontaneity?
That's a valid concern. But the counter-argument is that your infrastructure should be boring so your life can be exciting.
Boring infrastructure. I like that.
If your infrastructure, your money, your food, your schedule is chaotic, you spend all your energy managing the chaos, you have nothing left for creativity. The expert insight here is about the biological signal these routines send. The source emphasizes that these routines tell the mind, you are safe.
You are safe.
Think about your amygdala, the threat detection center of your brain. It scans for change, because change often meant danger in our evolutionary history. When your environment is predictable, when you know what you're eating, you know what you're wearing, your amygdala can stand down.
It can relax.
The body relaxes. If everything is constantly new and changing, your brain is constantly on high alert, scanning for threats.
So the boring routine is actually a safety blanket for your nervous system.
Precisely. Simple living, in this context, is a biological mechanism for peace. It lowers your baseline stress level.
That is fascinating. So we aren't just saving money by not buying the new thing. We are saving our nervous systems from the stress of the new.
We are opting out of the constant stimulation loop.
So what does this all mean? If we zoom out, we're looking at a philosophy that asks us to stop fighting with our money.
We are stopping the war. The synthesis of this calm life philosophy is that money doesn't need strict rules. It doesn't need self-punishment, and it doesn't need perfection. It doesn't require you to be a Wall Street wizard.
What does it require?
Awareness, patience, and kindness toward yourself.
And it grows slowly. That was a big takeaway for me. We don't have to fix it all today. A calm life grows through gentle saving and mindful spending.
And the ultimate payoff isn't just a number in an account, it's the feeling. When money feels calm, life feels lighter. And as the source says, when life feels lighter, rest comes more easily.
I think we could all use a bit more rest.
Yep.
Now, before we let you go, we want to leave you with a final thought. We talked about how routines and familiarity signal safety to the brain, and how constant newness can actually be a stressor.
This raises an important question to mull over. If familiarity equals safety for the brain, in what other areas of your life beyond money are you introducing unnecessary stress just by chasing newness?
Are you constantly upgrading your hobbies, your social circles, or even your entertainment? When settling for enough might actually give your brain the break it is desperate for.
Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is just stay put and enjoy what you already have.
Something to think about the next time you feel the urge to overhaul your life. Thanks for diving in with us.
Take care. You know that specific feeling when you wake up? The alarm goes off and before your feet even hit the floor, there's just this background hum.
Right. It's not a loud noise.
No, it's not a siren. It's not full-blown panic where you're hyperventilating. It's just this low-frequency static in the back of your skull.
And the source material we're covering today, it actually calls that the soft pressure.
The soft pressure, that is such a perfect name for it. And for a huge chunk of the population, that pressure isn't about relationships or health.
It's money.
It's money. It's this quiet, nagging tension that's always asking, am I doing enough? Is there a bill I forgot? Should I be investing in that thing my cousin told me about? It's just there.
And physiologically, that hum is your nervous system just sitting in a state of low-level arousal. It's exhausting.
Totally exhausting.
And usually the way we try to fix that financial anxiety is by speeding up. We think the antidote is to hustle harder, maximize every single yield, and, stare at complex spreadsheets until our eyes bleed.
Right, we try to outrun the anxiety. But today, we're doing a deep dive into a text that suggests the exact opposite. We're looking at a calm way to think about money, simplicity, and peace. And I have to say, coming from a world of get-rich-quick or 10x your life content, reading this felt like someone just opened a window in a stuffy room.
It's a radical departure, isn't it? It's almost countercultural. The mission of this deep dive, and really the core argument of the source, is to dismantle this whole assumption that money has to be heavy.
Okay.
We want to explore how a slower approach can actually transform money from a source of anxiety into a source of safety.
And we aren't talking about slow as in lazy. We're talking about intentionality.
Precisely. We're going to cover the profound difference between control and clarity. We're going to unpack this concept of the soft outline budget, which I think is going to change how a lot of listeners view their bank accounts.
Oh, I'm excited about that one.
And we're going to look at why doing less might actually be the smartest financial move for your actual brain chemistry.
I love that brain chemistry angle because money is math, sure, but how we feel about money is entirely biological.
It's emotional and physiological.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics of management, because management is a loaded word.
It really is.
If I tell you to manage your finances, what's the first image that pops into your head?
Honestly, stress. I picture a calculator, a stack of receipts, and a feeling of guilt that I bought a sandwich instead of making one. I feel like management usually implies policing.
Exactly. That is the traditional model. It relies on hypervigilance. And the source argues that we just misunderstand management. We think it means watching every number, constantly refreshing the banking app.
Obsessing over daily market fluctuations.
Right. We conflate staring at the problem with fixing the problem.
But staring at it just makes the monster look bigger.
It does. But this text offers a massive reframe. It defines management simply as awareness.
Just awareness.
That's it. Not punishment. Awareness. It breaks it down into three incredibly simple points. Number one, knowing money comes in. Number two, knowing money goes out.
And number 3,
Knowing that you are doing your best in between.
knowing you are doing your best in between. See, that feels dangerous to some people. It feels like letting yourself off the hook.
I get that.
If I'm just doing my best, am I actually making progress? Or am I just, drifting?
That's the fear talking.
Yeah.
But the text makes a key distinction between negligence and clarity.
Yeah.
It's not about ignoring your finances.
Okay.
It's about shifting the goalpost from control to clarity. We often chase control. We want to control the market, control inflation, control the future. But that's an illusion. You can't control those things.
can't have clarity.
You can. And the text explicitly says you don't need perfection. You don't need control. You only need clarity.
And clarity brings calm.
That's the phrase.
That phrase really stuck with me. It reminds me of the whole monster under the bed effect when the lights are off when you don't check your balance because you're scared. The monster is 10 feet tall. But when you turn the lights on, that's clarity. You might see a mess. You might see debt. You might see that you overspent. But you see the reality. And reality is finite.
The monster in your head is infinite.
Exactly.
That is a crucial insight. Reality is just logistics. You can deal with
Mhm.
logistics. You cannot deal with a vague, undefined sense of doom. So the first step to this calm way is simply turning on the light without judging the mess you find.
So let's say we have the lights on, we see the numbers. How do we organize them without falling back into that rigid, punishing mindset? This brings us to the soft outline budget.
Which is my favorite concept from this source. I mean, most budgeting advice is incredibly rigid. You have the envelope method or zero-based budgeting.
Yes, every dollar has a job.
And if you spend $10 on a book you didn't plan for, the whole system breaks and you feel like a failure.
And when you feel like a failure, you usually just give up entirely and buy 3 more books. It's the what the hell effect.
Exactly. Rigid systems are brittle, they break easily. The soft outline is flexible. It treats the budget as a narrative, not a math problem.
A narrative? How so?
It sounds like this. I earn money each month, I pay for the things I need, and if I can, I save a little.
If I can. That conditional phrase does a lot of heavy lifting there.
It removes the binary of success versus failure. The takeaway here is that when you view your finances through this soft outline, money stops feeling so mysterious.
And when something stops being
It
mysterious,
stops being frightening. It becomes manageable.
it sounds like treating yourself like an adult rather than a misbehaving child. I earn, I pay, I save if possible. It's a rhythm, not a cage.
A rhythm is sustainable for a lifetime. A cage is something you eventually break out of.
So we have this soft outline, but we still live in a world that is constantly trying to get us to spend money. I mean, we have algorithms designed by PhDs to make us buy things we don't need. How does this source suggest we handle the actual act of spending?
This moves us into what the text calls the art of the pause. And again, the focus shifts from restriction, which just triggers feelings of deprivation, to slowing down.
Deprivation is a terrible strategy for long-term change. It's like a crash diet.
It is.
If you tell yourself, I can never buy a latte again, eventually you're going to buy the coffee machine, the beans, and the whole pastry shop.
You binge. So the source suggests that instead of a hard no, you just insert a little wedge of time.
Yeah.
You slow the process down with 3 specific questions.
I wrote these down because I want to start using them. The first one is pretty standard. Do I need this right now? We all know that one.
Sure.
But the second one is the game changer for me.
Which is, will this add something calm to my life?
That is such a profound shift in criteria. Usually when I'm impulse buying, my brain is asking, will this make me happy? Or is this exciting? Or will this make me look cool?
Those are dopamine-seeking questions. You're looking for a hit. Will this give me a rush? But asking, will this add calm, engages a completely different part of the brain. It moves you from seeking short-term stimulation to seeking long-term well-being.
It forces you to project into the future. Because a
Wow.
lot of things I buy, little gadgets, fast fashion, just clutter, they give me a buzz for 10 minutes.
Hmm.
But do they add calm? No. They add clutter, they add maintenance, they add visual noise.
Exactly. They actually subtract calm.
And the third question is, can this wait?
Which brings us to the power of the pause itself. The source emphasizes that the answer to these questions can be yes. You can buy the thing.
Good.
This isn't about asceticism, but the magic is in the waiting. The text has the pause creates space, and space reduces stress.
It breaks that automatic loop. See? Want. Buy.
It interrupts the impulse. And physiologically, impulsive spending is often a stress response. We shop to self-soothe. We feel bad, we buy something, we feel a tiny bit better for a moment.
Yeah, for a second.
By pausing, you allow your nervous system to regulate. You move from a reactive state to a responsive state. You're regaining agency.
Regaining agency sounds a lot better than saving $5. It feels more empowering.
It is. It's about being the driver, not the passenger.
Speaking of agency, let's talk about safety. Because for most people, financial safety is a number. They think, when I hit $50,000 in savings, then I'll breathe.
Or, when I own a house, then I'll feel safe.
Exactly.
That is the common belief, that safety is external. It's a pile of resources you build around yourself like a fortress. But this source challenges that directly.
Yeah.
It argues that safety isn't about the cash. It's about trust.
Trust in what? The economy. Because I definitely do not trust the economy.
No, and you shouldn't, because it's unpredictable. The text defines financial safety as trusting in your own adaptability.
Okay.
Trusting that you can handle small problems. Trusting that if the plan changes, you can pivot. Trusting that you can learn as you go.
That is a massive shift. If my safety is tied to a number, I am constantly vulnerable because numbers change. Markets crash. Emergencies happen.
Exactly. If your safety is external, it can be taken away. If your safety is internal, tied to your own resilience and capability, it's so much more stable. The source says, when you stop fighting money and start working with it, the stress slowly fades.
There's also a really beautiful reframing of why we save in this text. It moves away from fear.
Yes. Usually we save for a rainy day.
Which is such a depressing metaphor. It implies that a storm is coming. I'm saving money because I expect disaster.
You're bracing for impact.
Yeah.
And that keeps the brain in a state of threat vigilance. You're constantly looking at the horizon for the storm clouds.
Yeah.
The source suggests we view saving as preparing for comfort. We're preparing for care.
Preparing for comfort. So that emergency fund isn't a disaster fund. It's a sleep better at night fund.
It's a subtle linguistic shift, but language shapes reality. And the text notes that this kind of security, even a small amount, helps the body relax. There's a real physiological link. When you have that cushion, your cortisol levels drop. Your shoulders physically drop. You aren't scanning for threats because you know you have a buffer.
But building that buffer, that's where people get stuck. They look at the soft outline, they understand the pause, but then they think, I need to save $500 this month or it doesn't count.
The all-or-nothing trap.
And if they can't, they do nothing.
It's lethal to progress. And the source is adamant about avoiding the dramatic overhaul. We love that new year, new me energy where we vow to never eat out again and save 50% of our income.
But that never lasts.
Never. The text argues for the power of small, quiet habits.
The quiet, everyday ways. I loved the examples the source gave because they are so achievable.
They're low-resistance actions.
Right. It wasn't sell your car. It was, I'll make coffee at home today. I'll cook something simple tonight. And my favorite, I'll use what I already have.
I'll use what I already have. That phrase is incredibly powerful. We live in a culture that tells us everything we own is obsolete the moment we buy it.
Oh, for sure.
There's always a better phone, a better pan, a better jacket.
Choosing to use what you have is almost an act of rebellion.
It is. It's a mantra for contentment. And notice how light those choices feel. They don't require massive willpower. You don't have to white-knuckle your way through making coffee at home.
It's just a small, quiet choice.
Yeah.
But does that actually move the needle? I can hear the skeptics saying, okay, saving $4 on coffee isn't going to make me a millionaire.
Well, mathematically, over 30 years, maybe not a millionaire, but it adds up. But the source argues the primary benefit isn't the math, it's the psychology.
Okay.
When you make these small choices, you begin to feel capable.
Capable.
Yes. Feeling capable is inherently calming. It builds self-efficacy. You're proving to yourself, I can make a choice that is good for me. And that confidence, it snowballs.
So it's proof of concept. You do the small thing, you feel good, so you do another small thing.
And the source points out that slow change feels safer. Fast change is exciting, but it triggers the brain's resistance mechanisms.
Mm.
We naturally resist radical shifts.
Hmm.
Slow change, one small habit becoming normal, then another, it bypasses that resistance. As the text says, money responds well to patience.
Money responds well to patience. I feel like we live in a world that demands money respond to speed. High-frequency trading, instant transfers, crypto spikes. Patience feels vintage.
But patience is where the peace is. And that leads us into the broader philosophy of the source, simplicity.
Right.
Now, simple living is a trendy term. We usually think of empty white rooms, minimal furniture, maybe one fork.
The aesthetic of minimalism.
Right. But the text defines simplicity differently. It defines it as choosing less noise. And this brings us back to the cognitive load of modern life. We are just drowning in choices.
We are.
Every single purchase you make, every item you bring into your life asks something from your mind.
It's not just the money cost, it's the mental cost.
Think about buying a new pair of headphones. It sounds simple, but you have to research models, compare prices, read reviews, worry about shipping, worry if you pick the right color.
Worry about the return policy.
Exactly. That is mental energy. That is glucose burning in your brain.
And we do that 10 times a day. No wonder we're exhausted.
The source explains it perfectly. When you buy less, your mind works less. And when the mind works less, it rests more.
So frugality isn't just about keeping money in your wallet. It's about keeping energy in your brain.
It's cognitive conservation.
Mm-hmm.
We all suffer from decision fatigue. By the end of the day, our ability to make good choices is just eroded because we've made 1,000 tiny decisions.
Mm-hmm.
If you adopt a philosophy of enough, knowing what you like and sticking to it, you just opt out of that cycle.
You don't have to process the marketing because you already know you're good. You have enough.
Exactly. And this connects to the idea of routines. The source calls them gentle routines.
Now, routine can sound boring. We're taught to shake things up, be spontaneous.
In our hyper-novelty culture, yes, we want new experiences constantly. But the source argues that routines act as safety signals to the body.
How does a routine signal safety?
Well, think about your primal brain. It's constantly scanning for danger. When your environment is predictable, when you have the same morning ritual, the same standard dinner on Tuesdays,
The same budgeting time.
yes, it sends a message to that primal brain. Nothing is wrong. You're safe. There are no tigers here.
Because there are no surprises.
Exactly. And safety invites rest. In a chaotic world, creating pockets of predictability, whether that's a soft outline budget or just having oatmeal every morning, is a profound form of self-care.
It's letting your guard down.
It creates a container where you can actually relax, rather than constantly adapting to new inputs.
So if we look at the arc of this deep dive, we've moved from the soft pressure of anxiety, that hum in the morning, to this idea of gentle routines and clarity. It's a really cohesive argument for just lowering the volume on your financial life.
It is. It's about moving from a relationship with money that is adversarial, where you're fighting your impulses, fighting the market, fighting your budget, to one that's cooperative.
And kindness seems to be the glue holding it all together. That's what I really took away from this source. The text explicitly mentions kindness toward oneself.
Which is incredibly rare in financial advice. Usually the tone is discipline, grit, hustle.
Stop buying avocado toast.
Right. It's shameful. But this source reminds us that a peaceful life isn't built overnight. It's built gently, through small choices.
And you're allowed to learn slowly.
Yes, you are allowed to learn slowly. You are allowed to change your mind.
That permission to learn slowly feels like the ultimate stress reliever. There is no deadline for getting this right. I don't have to fix my entire financial life by Friday.
No, you just need to find calmer ways. That's the goal. Not perfection, but calm.
Yeah.
Because as the source connects in the end, everything flows downstream from this state of mind. It says, when money feels calmer, life feels lighter. And when life feels lighter, sleep comes more easily.
And in the current climate, where sleep is a commodity and stress is the default, that is a high-value return on investment.
It's the ultimate metric of success. Not net worth, but rest. If your money strategy is keeping you up at night, it's the wrong strategy no matter what the math says.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listener with a final thought from the text. We talk a lot about life being richer or more successful, but the source uses the word lighter.
Lighter is such a visceral feeling. It's the absence of that heavy backpack we talked about at the start. It's the absence of the hum.
So here's the question for you to carry into your day or your evening. What would lighter look like for you tomorrow? Not 5 years from now when you're debt-free, but just tomorrow.
Hmm.
Maybe it's pausing before that one purchase and asking if it adds calm.
Hmm.
Maybe it's ignoring the stock market news for 24 hours. Or maybe it's just trusting yourself a little bit more than you did today.
Just a little bit. That's all it takes to start.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
You know how sometimes you hear a phrase in English that just stops you? Not because it's complicated, but because it's so perfectly, well, English. Well, you, our listeners, you sent us down a bit of a rabbit hole with 20 such phrases, these lesser-known idioms, that are just packed with flavor.
Yeah, some really interesting ones came through.
Totally. So think of this as maybe your shortcut to sounding less like you're reading a textbook.
And more like you're actually living the language.
Exactly. Our mission today, it's pretty simple. Unpack these gems, figure out what they really mean, and, how you can maybe weave them into your everyday conversation.
To really nail that natural English flow.
Right. So ready to explore beyond the usual "it's raining cats and dogs"?
Definitely. Let's do it.
Okay, let's kick things off with one that sounds a bit, well, crunchy. Bite the biscuit.
Bite the biscuit.
Yeah.
It's a curious one, isn't it?
Mm.
It essentially boils down to having to face an unpleasant situation.
Right.
Or, accept something difficult, even if it's the absolute last thing you want to do.
So like gritting your teeth and getting on with it.
Exactly. What's interesting about this, I think, is that sense of quiet resignation it carries. It's not really about fighting back,
No.
but more about stoically getting through something.
Right. And the example from an article nails it. I didn't want to go to the dentist, but I had to bite the biscuit and make the appointment.
Yeah, we've all been there, haven't we?
Oh, totally. That moment where you just have to brace yourself and get on with something you're dreading, it's just so much more evocative than saying, I had to do it.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's maybe a hint of that British stiff upper lip in there. That idea of just getting on with things without too much fuss.
Could be, yeah.
It's a very understated way of expressing a pretty common struggle.
Okay, next up we have one that paints a rather dramatic and, unfortunately, often all too familiar picture. Throw someone under the bus.
Ooh, yeah. This idiom is definitely on the sharper side.
Mm-hmm.
To throw someone under the bus
Mm.
means to betray them, basically for your own benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Often in a public setting, like work.
So sacrificing them to save yourself.
Pretty much. You're sacrificing their well-being or their reputation to make yourself look better or, avoid blame. The imagery is just brutal, isn't it?
It really is. And the example in the article couldn't be clearer. During the meeting, Mark threw Jane under the bus just to look good in front of the boss. Ouch.
Big ouch.
We've probably all witnessed or maybe even been on the receiving end of something like that. It really cuts to the core of that kind of self-serving behavior.
It does.
Why under the bus, though? Is there any specific origin there, do you know?
Well, the exact origin is a bit murky, actually.
Yeah.
But the bus, in this context, it clearly symbolizes something large, powerful, dangerous.
Right. You wouldn't survive that.
No. So the act of throwing someone in its path vividly conveys that idea of utter betrayal and potential harm to the person being sacrificed.
Like being completely abandoned.
Yeah, it's a very visceral image.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Shifting gears to something that brings maybe a wry smile to my face,
Right.
especially if you've ever tried to coordinate, well, pretty much anything with more than two people.
Oh, let me guess. Like herding cats.
You got it. Like herding cats.
It's such a wonderfully vivid and humorous way to describe a task that is just incredibly difficult, bordering on impossible to manage.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Cats are independent creatures, right? Getting them to move in a coordinated way, it's chaos. Pure chaos.
The example from the source is perfect. Trying to organize my group of friends for a trip was like herding cats.
Oh, I feel that.
I think anyone who's ever planned a group outing just let out a collective sigh of recognition there.
Definitely.
What makes this idiom so effective, do you think? Is it just the inherent difficulty of dealing with cats?
I think it's the perfect storm, really. The cat's independent nature combined with the implied frustration of the person trying to control them.
Right, that feeling of helplessness.
Exactly. There's a sense of futility and a shared understanding that some tasks are just inherently unruly, resistant to organization.
Bah.
The humor comes from that relatable feeling of being completely overwhelmed.
Now, here's one that sounds like a fantastic motto for self-preservation. Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Huh. Exactly. This idiom is brilliant. It's all about establishing healthy boundaries.
Okay.
When you say, not my circus, not my monkeys, You're clearly stating that a particular situation or drama or problem,
Right.
it's just not your responsibility.
Right. I'm out.
Precisely. You're choosing not to get involved. It's a way of detaching yourself from other people's chaos.
The example is so concise and effective. They can argue all they want. It's not my circus, not my monkeys. It's a pretty direct way to say, I'm staying out of this. It really speaks to a desire to protect your own peace of mind, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Where do you think the circus and monkeys imagery comes from? It's so specific.
Well, the circus, right,
Yeah.
with its inherent spectacle and often unpredictable nature,
Hmm.
that represents a chaotic situation.
Okay, makes sense.
And the monkeys, often seen as mischievous, difficult to control, they symbolize the problematic individuals involved.
Ah, I see.
So by saying it's not your circus or your monkeys, you're basically disclaiming ownership of the whole messy situation and the responsibility for managing it.
Okay, this next one resonates deeply in our, well, often frantic modern lives. Burning the candle at both ends.
Oh yes, burning the candle at both ends. It paints a very clear picture, doesn't it? Someone who is just overworking themselves, not getting enough rest.
Yeah.
They're depleting their energy reserves at a totally unsustainable rate, much like a candle consumed from both ends will burn down incredibly quickly.
It really speaks to that lifestyle of constant activity without adequate recovery.
Exactly.
The article provides a really common scenario. She's studying and working two jobs, burning the candle at both ends.
Classic example.
It's such a vivid way to describe exhaustion and, the potential for burnout. It's almost a warning, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think the image of the candle being consumed from two sides really emphasizes the rapid depletion of resources, in this case, someone's health, their energy.
Right.
It implicitly suggests that this pace, well, it just can't be maintained indefinitely.
Yeah.
It'll eventually lead to negative consequence.
Yeah, you'll hit a wall. Okay, here's an idiom that I think we've all felt at one point or another when faced with a tough choice. Caught between two stools.
Caught between two stools. Yes, this perfectly illustrates that feeling of being unable to decide between two options.
Like you're stuck.
Exactly.
Right.
You're in a really precarious position, unable to comfortably commit to either choice, and, well, trying to sit on both simultaneously will likely lead to a fall, right?
Metaphorically speaking.
Metaphorically, yes. It's a state of indecision and potential discomfort.
The example given is, he's caught between two stools, take the job abroad or stay close to family.
Oof, that's a tough one.
Yeah, that feeling of being torn, where each option has significant pros and cons, and choosing one means potentially losing out on the other. It's a real dilemma.
Exactly. It highlights the difficulty of making a decision when both options seem appealing, or maybe when choosing one entails a significant sacrifice.
Yeah.
You're just stuck in the middle, unable to move forward comfortably.
And for one with a bit more dramatic flair, something that sounds like a spectacular failure, go down in flames.
Go down in flames. Yes, this one vividly describes a failure that is sudden, often very public, and quite catastrophic.
So not just failing, but failing big time.
Precisely. It's not just a minor setback. It implies a complete and dramatic collapse of something like a project, a business venture, maybe even a personal endeavor.
Right.
The flames part really adds that element of, destruction and finality.
The example is stark. The company's new product launch went down in flames due to poor planning.
Yeah, you can almost see the metaphorical explosion, right?
Totally. The utter devastation of a failed attempt. It's certainly a more impactful way to say something didn't succeed.
It is. The imagery evokes a sense of complete, utter failure, leaving very little room for recovery. It's a memorable and dramatic way to describe a significant disaster.
Let's move to something a bit more celebratory now, an idiom that suggests a night of uninhibited fun. Paint the town red.
Paint the town red. This is a wonderfully exuberant idiom. It just means to go out and have a wild, lively, festive time.
Well, letting loose.
Yeah, often involving partying, general merriment. It suggests a night of letting loose and enjoying oneself to the absolute fullest.
The example is, after our exams, we went out and painted the town red.
Sounds about right.
It definitely conjures up images of celebration and carefree fun. It makes you wonder, though, why red? Is there any historical significance to that color here?
That's a fascinating question, actually. While the exact origins are debated, the color red has long been associated with excitement, passion, even a bit of rebellion.
Okay.
So it's possible the phrase originally implied a more, let's say, riotous or even slightly mischievous form of celebration,
Ah.
metaphorically coloring the town with their energetic activities.
Interesting. Okay, here's one that describes a sudden and intense loss of temper. Fly off the handle?
Fly off the handle. Yeah, this means to suddenly become very angry and just lose control of your emotion.
Zap.
Exactly. Yeah. It suggests a quick and unexpected outburst of temper, much like, say, an axe head suddenly detaching from its handle and flying away.
Wow. Okay.
The emphasis is really on the suddenness and the loss of control.
The example provided is quite clear. Dad flew off the handle when he saw the broken window.
Yep. You can almost picture the sudden explosion of anger.
Totally. What does the handle symbolize in this context, then?
Well, the handle represents control, stability.
Right.
So when someone flies off the handle, they lose that control, and their anger becomes erratic, unpredictable. The imagery effectively conveys that sudden, uncontrolled nature of the outburst.
And now, a more direct, though definitely informal way to ask someone to calm down. Keep your shirt on.
Keep your shirt on. Yes, this is very colloquial, often lighthearted. It's a way of telling someone to stay calm, be patient.
Chill out.
Yeah, chill out. Don't get overly agitated or angry. It's often used when someone's acting impatiently or seems like they're about to lose their temper. There's a certain casualness to it.
The example is straightforward. Keep your shirt on. The food will be ready soon.
Yeah.
It's a pretty clear way of saying, relax. There's no need to get worked up. There's definitely a touch of informal humor there, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think it's a slightly absurd image, right? Implying the person is so worked up they might literally start taking off their clothes.
Right.
This exaggeration helps to lighten the mood and encourage them to calm down.
Okay. This next one is definitely not for polite company in most situations. Put a sock in it.
Ooh, yeah.
Huh.
Put a sock in it.
That-
It's a very rude, very direct way to tell someone to be quiet.
So use with caution.
Extreme caution. It's generally considered quite impolite and should be used very sparingly, if at all. It conveys a strong desire for someone to just stop talking,
Why?
often because what they're saying is annoying or unwanted or just going on too long.
The example given is, he wouldn't stop talking, so she told him to put a sock in it. It's clear from this that it's a phrase used out of frustration
Definitely.
and likely to cause offense. It's certainly not something you'd use in a professional setting, I imagine.
Absolutely not.
Where does this rather bizarre imagery even come from? A sock.
Well, the origin is thought to be related to early phonographs, actually.
Really?
Yeah, where a sock or maybe a piece of cloth was sometimes literally stuffed into the horn to dampen the sound.
Ah,
So applying that to a person's speech is a pretty crude way of saying their voice needs to be silenced or muffled.
wow. Okay. Moving on to a more strategic and insightful idiom. Know which way the wind is blowing.
Right. To know which way the wind is blowing means to be perceptive, aware of the current situation, the trends, the prevailing opinions.
Before you act.
Exactly. Before making a decision or taking action. It suggests having foresight and understanding the direction things are heading, whether that's in politics, business, or just social situations.
The example provided is, good politicians always know which way the wind is blowing.
A classic example again.
It highlights the importance of being politically astute, understanding public sentiment to make effective choices. How does someone practically know which way the wind is blowing? It sounds a bit mystical.
It's not mystical, really. It involves paying close attention to various indicators, public opinion polls, sure, but also current events, social media trends, market research,
Okay.
even subtle shifts in people's attitudes and behaviors. It's about being observant, analytical, and able to interpret these signs to anticipate future developments.
Got it. Okay, here's an idiom that paints a picture of minimal staffing. Skeleton crew.
Skeleton crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, this refers to the absolute minimum number of staff required to keep a business or a service or an operation running at just a basic level.
Just the bones.
Exactly. It implies a significant reduction in personnel, often due to circumstances like holidays, off-peak hours, or maybe budget constraints. The image is of just the essential framework remaining.
The example is, only a skeleton crew was working during the holiday weekend.
Yep.
It really conveys that idea of a place being minimally staffed with just the necessary people to keep things ticking over.
Exactly. It emphasizes the bare essentials being in place, with most of the usual workforce absent. It suggests a limited capacity and perhaps a slower pace of operations, too.
Now, for an idiom that helps to keep minor issues in perspective, a storm in a teacup.
A storm in a teacup. I love this one. It's a wonderful idiom that describes a situation where a small, insignificant problem or disagreement is just blown way out of proportion.
Made into a huge drama.
Exactly. Exaggerated, made to seem much more serious and dramatic than it actually is. The contrast between the immense power of a storm and the tiny scale of a teacup really highlights the absurdity of the overreaction.
The example is, their fight was just a storm in a teacup. It's a great way to downplay a petty argument or someone making a massive deal out of something trivial.
It is. It's quite a gentle way, actually, of suggesting that people are overreacting and that the issue at hand is, well, not as significant as they're making it out to be.
Here's one that can be incredibly frustrating to encounter, especially when you feel like you're making progress. Move the goalposts.
Ooh, yes. Move the goalposts. This describes a particularly unfair tactic where someone changes the rules or the requirements of a task or competition after you've already started working towards the original objectives.
So frustrating.
Incredibly. It creates a sense of injustice and makes it much harder, if not impossible, to achieve success because the target keeps shifting.
The example is infuriatingly relatable. I was about to complete the task when they moved the goalposts again.
You just want to scream.
Right, that feeling of constantly having your efforts undermined because the criteria for success are never fixed.
It really speaks to a lack of integrity, I think, and can be incredibly demotivating. It suggests the person moving the goalposts is either deliberately trying to prevent success
Or just disorganize.
or maybe just being inconsistent and unfair in their expectations. Either way, it's not good.
Okay, this next one suggests a sudden and often opportunistic departure. Jump ship.
Jump ship.
Yeah. This means to suddenly leave a job or an organization or a situation, often when things are becoming difficult or unfavorable.
Getting out while the getting's good. Or bad.
Kind of. It implies a swift and sometimes unexpected departure, often with the implication of seeking a better opportunity elsewhere. The nautical imagery is quite strong here.
The example is 3 employees jumped ship after the new manager arrived.
Tells a story, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests maybe a lack of confidence in the new leadership or perhaps a desire to escape a potentially negative environment. Why ship specifically?
Well, the ship symbolizes the organization or the situation. So